inevitable.
And I am tired. Hey there, folks. The MCU. I think I'm over it. Now, for clarity, this is not me saying I will never watch an MCU-related thing again, but I think I have reached the point where I'm prepared to give myself permission to stop. Again, I might not, but like to give you an idea of where I'm at, there have historically, over the lifetime of this channel, been 3 franchises that I have talked the most about. They have been Doctor Who, the MCU, and Star Wars. Of those 3, Doctor Who's probably the only one that is going to end up staying in a position of when new stuff is out, I will talk about it. Now, certainly compared to the MCU and Star Wars, it benefits from throwing a lot less at me. So while I am going to be talking about the MCU in specific, I guess I'll throw this out at the start. It might just be franchise fatigue. I might just be tired of the friggin' avalanche of content that there is that Star Wars and the MCU have given me. Star Wars was easier to walk away from. Like the decision to not watch everything Star Wars related basically came down to the fact that they kept integrating more and more stuff from the Clone Wars and Rebels, which I never watched and didn't really feel like catching up on. And so when stuff like Ahsoka happened or The Bad Batch, I tried a couple episodes and was like, no, this is all tied into stuff I don't know, and I don't have the time or the inclination to catch up on it so that I do know. I guess this isn't for me. The other stuff has come along since then that I've just been like, oh, that came out? Okay. Once I stopped trying to keep up with all the Star Wars stuff, it actually felt like, actually, a lot of this I don't need, do I? I'm still going back for some of it. Andor's freaking great. Love that. I mean, I tried The Acolyte, had some interesting ideas, didn't pull them together, but I tried it. And, I'll probably be back for some other things here and there as it goes on. And then, like as I said, Doctor Who I'll stick with, but it's also probably about to go on anywhere from 3 to 5 year hiatus. In addition to the fact that even when it is cranking stuff out, the most it has ever had out in the same year has been 14 things. These days we're down to 8 episodes per season. So like we've had a wild range of stuff, but even at its most prolific, it is nowhere near as much stuff as the MCU and Star Wars have given me. But as I said, I kind of came to terms with being like, I don't need to watch everything Star Wars related. Basically, once I realized that there was already a huge chunk of Star Wars that I hadn't seen, and they're starting to like really bank on nostalgia for that, and I'm like, oh, but I don't have nostalgia for that. So I guess I'm okay then. With the MCU, it's a little bit different because I have kept up with everything with the MCU. Well, I say have, I still haven't seen Thunderbolts. And also, by the time this video comes out, Fantastic Four might be out. I'm recording it well ahead of that. I mentioned in a video a couple of weeks ago, I'm shooting a bunch of stuff a bit in advance because I've just got a really busy stretch of time coming up and I'm trying to get ahead of stuff. But I'm not planning to rush out to the theater. And like, I even heard good things about the Thunderbolts. I even have a decent hope that I will like it. But I didn't rush to see it in the theater. It's kind of fallen into the, okay, well, I'll grab it on streaming when it comes out. And that's the first MCU thing I had done that with. I've kept up with the rest of it. Even the things that were bad, I saw through to the end. Secret Invasion. But I really have reached a point where it's like, this is not appointment entertainment for me anymore. And I kind of wanted to examine that. Because some of it might be me. Some of it might be the MCU itself. But You know, I realized that something was going on when I saw that list of all the actors who are going to be in Avengers Doomsday. Plus, we have Robert Downey Jr. as Doctor Doom. And I'm like, okay, this should have me excited. And it doesn't. In terms of like, oh, look at all these names we've announced. I'm like, okay, but you've done that. Like, it's worth keeping in mind the steady escalation we had of the MCU through the first three phases. We initially started out with, a handful of decent movies. Then we had the Avengers. They all came together. Holy crap, we haven't really seen this before. And then we got, the second and third phases, and we built up to Infinity War, which felt huge, and then Endgame, which felt even bigger. And I don't want to act like the size of the cast and the size of the universe was the only thing that Endgame and Infinity War had going for them. I do actually genuinely think those are good movies. Most of the Avengers are good movies. The first one's a good movie, and Infinity War and Endgame are good movies. Age of Ultron, it's fine. It's fine. It's whatever. But there was a steady build, and it was building to stuff we hadn't really seen before, at least not at this size and scope and scale. And the fact that it was being done at all gave it a boost. Like, it still had to be done well. Again, I don't want to downplay it and act like the MCU was succeeding off novelty alone. It wasn't. But novelty was a factor. Let's not kid ourselves. And the novelty's not there anymore. You can't excite me for a new Avengers movie by showing me an extremely long list of actors who are going to be in it, because I don't trust you to do it well. Like, part of what was really exciting about Infinity War and Endgame was that there was a reason to think they'd be good. And again, I do think that they actually were. Why would I think that about these ones that are pulling together? Sure, all these actors, it's an impressive list, but like, the MCU is not in the state that it was. Actually, it really hasn't been since Endgame. I think even if the new stuff gets good again, and again, I've heard Thunderbolts is good. I still haven't seen it. But even as stuff gets good again, if it does consistently, I think we can easily at this point mark Endgame as the peak of the MCU, because it was the point at which quality and novelty converged into something huge and unique and new. What are they doing since then? They're chasing that same thing. Or at least that's what they're doing now. You can argue they didn't really do that through phase 4 and 5? Is phase 5 done? Like, where is even the demarcation between phase 4 and 5? Anybody know off the top of your heads? I mean, I know there is one. I could look it up. I could show it to you. But like, we knew where the demarcation points were in the earlier phases, because it always built up to the next Avengers film. And then we just haven't had them. And I don't want to act like if we'd had Avengers films through phases 4 and 5 that it suddenly would have meant everything was good. No, I think we probably would have had a lot of the same problems. And I know some people will just be jackasses and be like, oh, the characters aren't as good. It went woke. This, that. Like, the thing is, when you introduced all those new characters initially, they were just that, new things for us to get excited about. But as you brought in more and the old ones started being phased out, be it because the characters were killed off, the actors decided they were done, whatever, no matter how good the new stuff was, it still was going to feel a bit like a replacement for the stuff we didn't get to have anymore. And that's really hard to pitch. That's really hard to keep a sustained thing going when the thing that we fell in love with is missing a whole bunch of parts and pieces. Captain America's done. Iron Man's done. Black Widow's done. Guardians of the Galaxy is done. Some of these characters might come back in some way, but like, their stories are done. They're finished. They're wrapped up. Hulk's still hanging around, but he's also ran. Like, he's had awesome moments, but he's always been a supporting character. The tent poles that the fervor got built on, they're moving on, or they're being seen less. They're trying to continue with Black Panther, but the loss of Chadwick Boseman is kind of irreparable. And yeah, there's some who are still around who were around in the first one or two phases or so. Ant-Man, sure, but Quantumania rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. And also Ant-Man was kind of the fun, lighthearted one that worked because we had the more serious ones in contrast. And who's our tentpole right now? They want it to be the Fantastic Four. Maybe it will be. But there really isn't one. It's just getting harder and harder to care. And like Robert Downey Jr. as Doctor Doom, boy, would I love to be excited for that. I've wanted Doctor Doom on film for ages. I mean, we've had Doctor Doom on film a couple times. Yeah, that's not Victor Von Doom. I have wanted a legitimate portrayal of Doom on film for a long, long time. He is one of the greatest comic book villains to ever be written. And I think Robert Downey Jr. could do the part justice, but it's a gimmick, and I know it's a gimmick. That doesn't prevent him from being good in the part, but I don't have faith anymore. It's not that I think the MCU is incapable of being good. It's just that I can't count on it to be good anymore. The standard has dropped, and things that manage to get by on a certain amount of novelty, that doesn't cut it anymore. Because, like, again, novelty can sound like a cheap aspect. It can sound like almost a derogatory. This is all just novelty. Novelty can really inject a lot of energy into a thing. And the MCU had a lot of novelty for a while. Just the crossover by its nature, how big it went. Even when it came to Disney Plus, getting these series that tied into these movies, that was novel. And for me, as someone who has read at least a chunk of the comics, just the novelty of some of the characters we got to see in the shows that probably never would have had the dice rolled on them for movies. Characters like Moon Knight and Ms. Marvel. And the novelty is gone. At this point, I know any character that they think they can make work, they will. There was a time when just the idea of like, oh, Ms. Marvel, that got me excited. And then it kind of fell apart by the end. Well, in the middle, more of that one. Moon Knight, oh, that's exciting. And then it kind of fell apart at the end. Heck, even with WandaVision, whoa, that's such a weird, neat idea. And then it kind of fell apart at the end. Falcon and the Winter Soldier, interesting next step, and it kind of falls apart at the end. Secret Invasion, it kind of falls apart at the everything. Then there was She-Hulk, which I was really excited for, and it kind of fell apart at the start. But then it did pull it together by the end, but it got canceled anyway. Loki, I'd say the one really good standout for the streaming stuff, but it can't carry the weight by itself. I remember back before the DCEU was completely imploding. Back when it was first kicking up, and people would still talk about like the Nolan Batman as being a contrast to the MCU because he had either just finished up his trilogy and they were fresh enough, and yeah, Batfleck was cast, but we hadn't really done much. We hadn't really seen much with him yet. I remember making the comparison, I think, to somebody at the job that I haven't had for a while. Thank you for supporting me on Patreon so I don't have to go and do office work like that again. Hey, I really appreciate it. Let's get the plug in early. But I remember making the comparison that going to a Marvel movie was like going to the Olive Garden. Is it going to be the most incredible meal you've ever had? No. But you reliably know what you're going to get. And if it's what you want, you can count on a minimum level of quality. And going to a DC movie was like finding a little hole in the wall kind of restaurant that you've never heard of before. And maybe you found a real hidden gem that's going to blow your mind, or maybe you'll get food poisoning. The highs were higher and the lows were lower. That was how I used to think of it. I don't even know how to qualify DC anymore because at the time of my speaking, the new Superman isn't out, and we don't really have much to gauge the James Gunn era of DC on in terms of overall quality. I'm hopeful, cautiously, but like I can't really say how that's going to be. But Marvel, it's no longer like going to Olive Garden. It's a bit more like Taco Bell now. Like still kind of like, yeah, sure, why not? but not something you get pumped for unless you're in a real specific mood. And yeah, I know it's trite to make food comparisons, but I think a restaurant analogy and a restaurant metaphor is just slightly more sophisticated. At least that's what I tell myself, so I can sleep at night. I think more than anything, what is lacking right now is a core vision. The idea that there is a guiding hand and that there's a plan. Like, it doesn't help that obviously Kang was supposed to be a thing and that fell apart completely. I mean, partially for reasons outside of Disney's control, granted, although I kind of get the impression they were happy to have an excuse to jettison that entire thing. It is worth remembering the feeling that everything was planned and was building up was an illusion in those first 3 phases. It was cobbled together on the fly. It's always been cobbled together on the fly. But they managed to pull it together and make it look like there was a plan from the start. There wasn't. There was like kind of a general idea, and they got really lucky. They got the right talent on the right projects at the right points, and it pulled together. But it was not meticulously planned out from the start. But it didn't feel like it wasn't planned during the first 3 phases. It feels like it's not now. It is starting to feel scrambling. It's starting to feel desperate. And the bringing back of an actor like Robert Downey Jr. or bringing back the Russo brothers really lends a lot of credence to that feeling of desperation. On the subject of the Russo brothers, I think bringing them back might be the thing that has me the least interested in the new Avengers. The Avengers, well, honestly, Marvel movies in general, but the Avengers especially, that was something that always would have been like, first chance I can get, I'm going to see that. Now I'm like, I'll wait for the reviews. And if they're not great, I'll wait for streaming and watch it as a novelty. Here's the thing. I don't want to act like the Russo brothers are hacks or are untalented. They're not. But I'm going to need to explain this. They are at their heart and have always been and remain TV directors. Now, that's not a derogatory for like their skill as directors. What I mean is their specific skill set, which served them incredibly well when they came in and worked on Winter Soldier and Civil War and those 2 Avengers movies that they did. Their skill was taking the existing things already in place and building something really good with that. That was their skill back when they were still doing television. Like, they got really noticed for the work that they did on Community, and they brought directorial flair. I'm not going to pretend they didn't, because like most TV directors are just kind of point and shoot directors. They're journeyman directors, which is also not a bad thing to be, but it's not the kind of thing that elevates you and gets you exploded onto the onto the blockbuster scene. But they definitely have directorial flair. I'm not saying they don't, but their skill is bringing directorial flair to a really solid foundation that's already there when they come in. And not every director can do that. Some directors really need to kind of have more of a hand on building the thing in the first place so that they really feel comfortable doing it. Whereas there are other directors who can come in with characters that are already established, with actors who are already in place and are way more familiar with the way these characters work than they are as directors, and they are comfortable bringing out the best in everybody there. And that is what the Russos have been good at. But that means they need a really solid foundation to be leaping off from. And they had that with Community. And they had that with the MCU when they were in it before. What worked about Infinity War and Endgame was partially what they did, but partially everything that was the foundation that they built that on top of. And now they're coming in to do Doomsday and what is it? Secret War? What is the foundation that they're building on now? It's not solid. We kind of already saw with the Electric State what happens when they don't have a really, really rock solid foundation to work on. Oh, and also apparently these 2 movies, which I think maybe I heard about once, they only fared slightly better for the record. And look, I'll just freely admit that they also appear to be going in on the use of generative AI in filmmaking, which grosses me out. And that also makes me less inclined to watch it. But even if I take that out of the equation, even if I get like reassurance that that's not going to be in play for these Avengers movies, there's still just the core fact that what they are good at, and they are good at it, is building a really fantastic steeple on top of a church that's already there. But they're going to try and put a steeple on a church that is crumbling and in disrepair. Why would I be excited for that? Again, this doesn't mean that it can't be good. I am not declaring the MCU dead. I am not saying that it will never be good again. I'm saying that I have lost my passion. I've realized that I have kept watching MCU stuff because I have yet to miss an MCU thing. I mean, it's less pressing. It's all become less pressing. I didn't get onto Agatha all along right away. I did catch up on it and eventually watch the whole thing. And I am glad I did because episode 7 was phenomenal. Rest of the show was fine. Whatever. Episode 7 was great though. And it was kind of worth it for that. But I saw is it Brave New World or New World Order? It's Brave New World, right? Captain America, Brave New World, whatever the one was with the Red Hulk. I can't even remember the name of that thing. I saw that like more than a month after it came out. And Thunderbolts, how long has that been out? I don't even know. And here's the other thing. Here's, I think, the real kicker. Not only did I not rush out to see Thunderbolts, I think after the first week it was out, nobody was asking me about it either. I'm actually not sure if anybody did at all. I want to say that like 1 or 2 people asked me, hey, have you seen Thunderbolts or are you going to see Thunderbolts? But I'm not actually prepared to swear by that either. It's possible that nobody asked me. I can't even be sure. If you want a comparison, I got to Sinners late, about a month after it had been in theaters. I think more than a month because it took forever to come near me. But I had people asking all the time, asking, have you seen Sinners? Are you going to talk about Sinners? And I did, and it's amazing. But I feel like I'm not the only one who's losing enthusiasm for even the supposedly good entries in Marvel. Because like I said, I've heard Thunderbolts is good. Nobody was like, you gotta see it, though. So I guess I am still in I'll watch all of it, but none of it's pressing anymore. I do think part of it is fatigue. Fatigue with just this kind of entertainment, with superheroes as a broad thing, because if I'm being completely honest, I'm not super pumped for the new Superman or any of the stuff that James Gunn is doing either, and I like his work. But I think just entertainment franchises at this scale have gone from being exciting to being exhausting. Because I do think a chunk of that excitement was built on the novelty of it, of the newness of it, and it's not new anymore, and it's not all good. You know, we got the thing that we said, wouldn't that be so cool? And some of it was cool. Some of it wasn't. And they're still cranking it out at this preposterous rate. They're still bombarding us with it like it's coming out of a fire hose. I think, and this will not happen, I think for me as an audience member, as a viewer, the best thing the MCU could do is go down to maximum 2 movies a year and like spaced apart and give the shows a rest. You never gave me a chance to miss you. I mean, I think back to the big franchises of when I was younger, there was generally 3 years between Star Wars movies. That was true of the original trilogy. It was true of the prequel trilogy. And then we get to the sequel trilogy and it's every 2 years. Well, every 2 years for the numbered installments. And initially they were also giving us movies in between those as well, because they gave us that with Rogue One and Solo. It's too much. Like the mistake that these executives make, that they all make, is that if there is a franchise that has done this kind of massive numbers, if they give us more of it, every entry will do those same massive numbers, and it won't. You're just going to burn it out. While I'm not gone, I'm not excited. Again, I'm not declaring it dead, beyond hope, not worth it. But I am over it. The excitement's gone, and now it's just a thing that I could go to the movies to if I feel like it, but I probably won't. Maybe I'll catch it on streaming eventually. which is a weird thing to feel. But even if it was as good, I think I'd still be tiring by now. Just because, as I said, the novelty's gone. It's just more stuff now. But hey, who knows? Who knows? Maybe when I get around to some of this stuff, I'll have that passion reignited and I'll go, oh, why did I ever doubt? I'd be surprised, but you never know. The MCU, kind of over it. Where are you at with this? Whatever your thoughts might be, drop something down in the comments. Let's talk about it. Link to the Patreon as well. I plugged it already, but don't worry too much about any of that. What I really want you to remember is that you're beautiful, you are valid, and you are loved. You are the council, and I am just running the meetings. And until next time, this council is adjourned. And now it's time to thank my highest supporting patrons. Robin Moore, Quite Bearish, Zubin Lafula, Auntie Kate 808, Mira G, Angry Casper, Dave Hall, Andre, Movie Turtle, Oliver B, Welsh Wrestling Geeks, Melissa Pedersen, Mary Mello, Iron, Becky Sparks, Loki Eris, Tracy Scrabbit, and Sir Didymus is my favorite. We have a new little guy here under my hair. That's Satyr. So yes, he can now join in the distraction chorus as I try to read names. Thanks, guys. Welcome to the family.